Yes, I know it is a TED Talk and many of them are crap lately. This one though, worth the time. Folks, Fernando here doing another video for the Modern Survivalist and reacting to How the US is Destroying Young People's Future by Scott Galloway. I agree with 90% of the things he's talking about. Of course, there's always going to be a point or two in which we don't agree. That's fine. But he's talking about things we've addressed here in the channel before and simply putting it together in a way that you finally get how it's all interconnected. Let's get to this.
My name's Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU, and I appreciate your time. I have 44 slides in 720 seconds. Let's light this candle. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm actually a global television star. True story. I've had 4 TV series in the last 3 years. 2 of them have been canceled before they were launched, and 2 were canceled within 6 weeks. Let's recap.
If we want to juice this thing, if we want to put a cattle prod up the ass of the economy.
Bloomberg, the most trusted name in financial news. Not for long.
I'm going to do whatever I can for this country of ours.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Jeez, come on, dude. You're 0 for 2. Are you stuck?
Face for podcasting. So first insight of the day, I'd like to be the first person to welcome you to the last TED. Okay. By the way, it's clear, what's it called? What are we here for? The Brave and the Brilliant? It's clear that Chris is a frustrated soap opera producer. Essentially what we have here is a telenovela where after a night of unbridled passion between Bill Gates and Malcolm Gladwell, they give birth to their bastard love child, Simon Sinek. Okay, I start us with a question. Do we love our children? Sounds like an illegitimate question, right? Well, I'm going to try and convince you otherwise. Essentially, as we go down generations, we're seeing that for the last 2 generations, people are making less money on an inflation-adjusted basis. In addition, the cost of buying a home, the cost of pursuing education continues to skyrocket. So the purchasing power, the prosperity, is inversely correlated to age. Simply put, as we get younger, we're taking away opportunity and prosperity from our youngest. The social contract that is now no longer in place, and for the first time in the US's history, a 30-year-old is no longer doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. This is a breakdown in the fundamental agreement we have with any society, and it creates rage and shame. As a result, people over the age of 55 feel pretty good about America, but less than 1 in 5 people under the age of 34 feel very good about America. This creates an incendiary. Righteous movements, cuts to our society end up becoming opportunistic infections because generally speaking, young people have a warranted envy, they're pissed off, and they're angry that they don't enjoy the same spoils and prosperity that were provided to our generation. A decent proxy for how much we value youth labor is minimum wage, and we've kept it purposely pretty low. If it had just kept pace with productivity, it'd be about $23 a share, but we've decided to purposely keep it low. Out of reach, median home price has skyrocketed relative to median household income. As a result, pre-pandemic, the average mortgage payment was $1,100. It's now $2,300 because of an acceleration in interest rates and the fact that the average home has gone from $290,000 to $420,000. By the way, the most expensive homes in the world, based on this metric, are number 3, Vancouver. Why? Because 60% of the cost of building a home goes to permits. Because guess what? The incumbents that own assets have weaponized government to make it very difficult for new entrants to ever get their own assets, thereby elevating their own net worth. This is the transfer I'm going to be speaking about.
He's so right about that, about weaponized government. You know, the government being there to basically take advantage of you, right? He's right about that.
This has resulted in an enormous transfer of wealth, where people over the age of 70 used to control 19% of household income, versus people under the age of 40 used to control 12. Their wealth has been cut in half. This isn't by accident, it's purposeful. This is me at UCLA in 1987. I know your first thought is I haven't changed a bit. This is also Mia Silverio, who is the analyst who put together these slides. By the way, Mia is 26. I did the math. Just by virtue of her being in this audience, it brings the average age of the entire conference down 11 days. When I applied to UCLA, the admissions rate was 76%. Today, it's 9%. I received a 2.23 GPA from UCLA. I learned nothing but how to make bombs out of household items in every line from Planet of the Apes. and the greatest public school in the world, Berkeley, decided to let me in with a 2.27 GPA. And that's what higher ed is about. Higher ed is about taking unremarkable kids and giving them a shot at being remarkable. And every year, it's gotten more expensive. Higher ed and homes, and the ability, not only is higher ed incredibly expensive, it's not accessible.
Look at this, house prices. The price of education is also through the roof. And I would say this is very much an American thing. In other countries, depends exactly where you are. But man, it is a lot worse than in most other developed countries, I would say.
Because me and my colleagues are drunk on luxury, and I'll come back to that. We've embraced the ultimate strategy. Me and my colleagues in higher ed wake up every morning and ask ourselves the same question when we look in the mirror. How can I increase my compensation while reducing my accountability? And we have found the ultimate strategy. It's called an LVMH strategy, where we artificially constrain supply to create aspiration and scarcity such that we can raise tuition faster than inflation. And old people and wealthy people have done the same thing with housing. All of a sudden, once you own a home, you become very concerned with traffic, and you make sure that there's no new housing permits. And here is a memo to my colleagues in higher ed. We're public servants, not fucking Chanel bags. Harvard is the best example of this. They've increased their endowment in the last 40 years and have decided to expand their enrollment, their freshman class, by 4%. Any university that doesn't grow their freshman class faster than population, that has over $1 billion in endowment, should lose their tax-free status because they're no longer in higher education. They're a hedge fund offering classes. My first recommendation, Biden should take some of that $750 billion earmarked to bail out the 1/3 of people that got to go to college on the backs of the 2/3 that didn't, and give $1 billion to our 500 greatest public institutions, size adjusted, in exchange for three things. One, they use technology and scale to reduce tuition by 2% a year, expand enrollments by 6% a year, and increase the number of vocational certifications and non-traditional four-year degrees by 20%. Where does that get us? In just 10 years, that doubles the freshman seats and cuts the cost in half. This isn't radical. This is called college in the 80s and 90s. Another transfer of wealth. Look at what's happened to wages. Oh, they've gone up, not as much as corporate profits. There's a healthy tension between capital and labor. For the last 40 years, capital has been kicking the shit out of labor. Well, you think, whoa, what about wages, right? They've gone up. Well, if you compare them to the S&P, they barely register. It's been an amazing time to own assets, but your attempt to get the certification or the income such that you can acquire assets has gotten harder and harder. In my class of 300 kids, it's never been easier to be a billionaire. It's never been harder to be a millionaire. By the way, our job in higher ed isn't to identify a top 1% of people who are freakishly remarkable or have rich parents and turn them into a super class of billionaires. It's to give the bottom 90 a chance to be in the top 10. You know who doesn't need me or higher education? The top 10%. The whole point of higher ed is to give the unremarkables, i.e. yours truly, who was raised by a single immigrant mother, a shot at being remarkable. The transfer has been purposeful. While the cohorts, corporations, and the ultra-wealthy continue to garner more and more of our wealth, we have decided, I know, if they win the gold, let's give them the silver and the bronze, and let's lower their taxes. This transfer is purposeful. It's not by accident. And it works. Senior poverty is way down, and we should celebrate that. Meanwhile, child poverty is flat to up. The third rail, I'm going to talk about Social Security. It would cost $11 billion to expand the child tax credit, but that got stripped out of the infrastructure bill. But the additional $135 billion a year to Social Security, that flies right through Congress. And every year we transfer $1.4 trillion.
That's fucking insane. That's crazy.
From a cohort that is increasingly doing less well to the cohort that is the wealthiest cohort in the history of this planet. I'm not against Social Security, but the criteria should be if you need it, not whether you have a catheter. 80% of you have absolutely no reason to ever take Social Security. It is bankrupting our nation, and we have fallen under this mythology that somehow it's this great social program. No, it's not. It's the great transfer of wealth from young.
And the idea, even in this is so typical, even in the name, like Social Security, okay, based on name only, you would assume it goes back to, yeah, you actually need it. You need Social Security because you're in a position where you need security from the state in some way, not because you're already overwhelmingly wealthy and don't need a damn thing, and you just add to that, right?
To old. How is this happening? Because our representatives are in fact representative. Old people vote. Washington has become a cross between the land of the dead and the Golden Girls.
Yet another thing. We have this, oh, Trump or Biden, they're fucking old. They're decrepit old people. They do not connect with not only the young generation, they don't connect with the healthy adult generation. These are all geriatric people.
Quite frankly, this is fucking ridiculous. And if I sound ageist, I am. And you know who else is ageist? Biology. When Speaker Pelosi had her first child, get this, 2/3 of households didn't have color televisions, and Castro had just declared martial law. But she's supposed to understand the challenges of a 17-year-old girl who's 5'9", 95 pounds, getting tips on dieting and extreme dieting from Facebook. She's supposed to understand the challenges that a 27-year-old single mother face. By the way, young and dreamy. Young and dreamy. The great intergenerational theft took place under the auspices of a virus. I know, let's use the greatest health crisis in the century to really speedball the transfer. This is the NASDAQ from 2008 to 2012. We let the markets crash. And by the way, you need churn, you need disruption because it seeds and recalibrates advantage and wealth from the incumbents to the entrants. It's a natural part of the cycle. But wait, lately, no, 1 million people dying would be bad, but what would be tragic is if we let the NASDAQ go down and guys like me lost wealth. So we pumped the economy, which again, increased the massive transfer of wealth. The best 2 years of my life, COVID, more time with my kids, more time with Netflix, and my value of my stocks absolutely exploded. And who has to pay for my prosperity? Not me. Future generations who will have to deal with an unprecedented level of debt. Why am I here and why do I get the prosperity I enjoyed? Because in 2008, we bailed out the banks, but we didn't bail out the economy. We let the markets fall. So as I was coming into my prime income earning years, I got to buy, no joke, these stocks at these prices. This is where those stocks are now. Where does a young person find disruption? When you bail out the baby boomer owner of a restaurant, all you're doing is robbing opportunity from the 26-year-old graduate of a culinary academy that wants her shot. We need disruption. We're economically attacking the young, but I know, let's attack their emotional and mental well-being. Let's take advantage of the fact of the flaws in our species with medieval institutions, Paleolithic instincts, and godlike technology. I'm just going to say, I think Mark Zuckerberg has done more damage to young people in our nation while making more money than any person in history.
That is so right. That guy is a fucking demon.
Oh, but wait, what could be worse? It's as if we let an adversary implant a neural jack into our youth to raise a generation of civic, military, and business leaders that hate America.
The idea that TikTok even exists in the United States when you know it's Chinese propaganda destroying your country, it is wild. It is insane.
How can we be this stupid?
I don't know, man.
All right, this all adds up to a bunch of graphs all headed up into the right. And what are they? What's the first one? Oh, that's self-harm rates, which have exploded, especially among girls, since my colleague Jonathan Haidt pointed out it's really gone crazy since social went on mobile. What's the next one? Teens with depression. The next one, men and women not having sex. Biggest fear of my parents was that I was going to get in too much trouble. My biggest fear, honestly, is that my kids aren't going to get into enough trouble. By the way, my advice to every young person watching this program is go out, drink more, and make a series of bad decisions that might pay off. Next graph, cumulative gun deaths. You're more likely to be shot in the United States if you're a toddler or an infant than a cop. Next graph, obesity, way up. By the way, the industrial food complex wants to addict you to shitty, fatty food so they can hand you over to the industrial diabetes complex. We should not romanticize obesity. You're not finding your fucking truth, you're finding diabetes.
Notice how people don't even want to clap to that because a lot of them are exactly that. Of course, you're a ugly fat fuck and you're being told that you're beautiful, that you're empowered, that you're curvier. No, you don't have curves. You're just obese. And it's not healthy. It's not good looking. It's not attractive. But the idea of, oh, well, you're perfect the way it is. Yes, that is very powerful. You know, being told that you're just fine the way you are is super convenient.
Overdose deaths, way up. Deaths of despair. When I was in high school, it was drunk driving. Now it's kids killing themselves. Young people don't want to have kids anymore. 2/3 of people aged 30 to 34, able-bodied, used to decide to have at least one child. It's been cut in half. It's now less than a third, 27%.
This is how we go extinct. This seems to be like but this is what I've been talking about in so many recent videos. We are going damn extinct. It's no joke. The idea of you tricking biology into getting the pleasure of sexual intercourse while not doing what nature wants you to do in the first place, it is a bargain. Nature makes you like something that it desperately needs so as to continue with the species. If you can fool that into not having any consequence for what you're doing, it's not a moral or religious opinion. It is nature that you're screwing over. And when you screw over nature, it will come back and bite you in the ass.
As a result, people over the age of 60 in the US, pretty happy. People under the age of 30, not so much. Some of the lowest in the free world. What can we do? Nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed with what's right with it. We got the hard stuff figured out. There are programs to address all of these issues that cost a lot of money. That's the hard part. And we have figured this out. In just 5 minutes post an earnings call, we can add $250 billion to the economy. We've got the hard part figured out, the resources. We have the money, but we decide not to do it. This is per capita spending on childcare in the United States relative to other nations.
This is where it's at. Look at how 1K public spending per child on childcare. It is just insane. It is crazy. Then you wonder about kids being the way they are. Then you wonder about school shootings. Then you wonder about why kids are insane and why young adults are fucked up as well. Why? It's because of this. The money is not going where it's supposed to be going. It's going to someone that doesn't even need it and probably doesn't even that hasn't even earned it, right? It just happened to be in a position where it snowballs into its own dynamic of being already wealthy and adding to that. But if you had a true government that and the idea of government being a bad word, bad government is bad. Good government does good things. The idea of all government is when you have a small, efficient government that does not fuck around with the things it should not be fucking around, like telling your kids that they're not a boy or a girl and just screwing around with so many things that it shouldn't be, and you could easily cut 90% of the expense that it has. I mean, I'm not even getting into the military insane spending and all of this shitty lobby. No, stick to what you're supposed to do. Do the administration that is required. Take care of people that obviously need being taken care of, which is not everyone. And this shit right here, that's how you have the crazy kids. That's how you have the school shootings. That's how you have the maniacs out there, because no one gives a fuck about them. It's not profitable, so screw them. In other parts of the world, they do things, at least that they do better. They just find a way of doing it better.
This is housing permits. Things are doable. We increase minimum wage to $25 an hour. It goes into the economy. The wonderful things about low and middle income households is they spend all their money. We have to restore a progressive tax structure with alternative minimum tax on corporations and wealthy individuals. We need to refund the IRS. We need to reform Social Security. It should be based on whether you need the money, not on how old you are. We need a negative income tax. My friend Andrew Yang screwed up a great idea, but he branded it incorrectly. Instead of calling it UBI, he should have got Republicans on board by calling it a negative income tax.
That's one of the things that, refund the IRS, really? That's exactly what is it going to do? Are you going to be giving them power to take even more money out of people that are already being choked to death? You have to be kind of careful with that. Now, the idea of restructuring things so that it's actually people that have a shitload of money pay, by God, yes. These are the companies that don't pay a fucking cent. They don't pay anything at all. The companies that make the most money on the planet don't pay anything. They just receive cuts and benefits and so many shit excuses by which they don't pay a damn thing. They just take, right? You're going to be giving those guys more power to even do more of that? Then no, we just have to disagree with that.
We need to eliminate the capital gains tax deduction. When did we decide that the money that capital earns is more noble than the money that sweat earns? Shouldn't it be flipped? We need to remove 230 protection for all algorithmically elevated content. We need identity verification. The reason we can have identity verification is because we have a First Amendment. Break up big tech. We have monopolies that are incurring greater and greater costs on every small business and parents because, again, see above, our representatives don't understand these technologies. We need to age gate social media. There's absolutely no reason anyone under the age of 16 should ever be on social media.
That is absolutely true.
We need universal pre-K. We need to reinstate the expanded child tax credit. We need term limits, see above Andrew Yang. We need income-based affirmative action. Any visible signs of affirmative action make no sense at all. You would rather be born gay or non-white in the United States today than poor, and that's a sign of our progress and our need to recalibrate who we give advantage to. Affirmative action, of which I'm a beneficiary of, I got Pell Grants, I got unfair advantage. Affirmative action is a wonderful thing, and it should be based on color. It should be based on green, how much money you have or don't have. Expand college enrollment.
As far as I know, that's how it works in most of the countries that I know of. The idea of you getting more money simply because you're black or you're Latino or you're whatever, that doesn't make any sense. Except for the United States, everywhere else, it works in terms of how much money do you have, or most of all, how much money do your parents have? If your parents don't have money, well, then yes, you get some kind of help to study or go, right? But it's all about how much money you have, not about what color your skin is. That is so insane that it's...
Vocational programs, mental health, ban phones in schools, invest in third places, big brothers and sisters programs. We need national service. We need to tell people in the United States and Canada that they live in the greatest countries in the world, and we need to remind them of that every day by exposing them to other great Americans where they feel connected.
That's maybe one of the problems. And that sounds super patriotic, but you know what? The thing is, and I come from a country that has a sense of patriotism that is difficult for anyone else to understand because we've been beaten so bad for so long. That's pretty much all we have left. And it is extremely ingrained in us. But you know what's the risk of that? When you're being told that you're the best ever and that, yeah, in spite of, like in my case, in spite of the poverty, the corruption, all that shit, well, this is the best place ever. All right, why would you change? If the United States is the best place, if the United States and Canada are the best countries in the world, why would you change them? They're perfect the way they are, right? They're the best ever. How can you be more than the best there is? That's kind of like, moot point in itself. If you're the best there is, then just stay there, stay on top. Now, if you're a little bit more self-critical, you may understand that there's things that you do very well and things you do not so well. Like, for example, the amount of spending per child. That's maybe one of the things that is not the best ever. This is not the best in the world. In fact, all of these do at least that. They do that better. So that's the part where, patriotism is awesome. There is a point in which it's a way of being gaslight into thinking that nothing needs to change. Everything is fine. So, why do any of the things he's describing?
National service. We need to tell people in the United States and Canada that they live in the greatest countries in the world, and we need to remind them of that every day by exposing them to other great Americans where they feel connected tissue. We can do all of this. We can do all of it. We have the resources. The question is, do we have the will? This is my last slide. It is an emotionally manipulative slide to try and get you to like me more. but it does have a message. This is the whole shooting match. Anybody here without kids, ask someone with kids. You have your world of work, you have your world of friends, you have your world of kids. Something happens here, your whole world shrinks to this. So I present, as I wrap here, which is a few questions. One, if you acknowledge that our kids are the most important thing in our lives, that everything else we do here is meaningful, but our kids' well-being and prosperity is profound. If you acknowledge that they're doing more poorly than previous generations, if you believe there's a chance that the illusion of complexity has done nothing but provide cloud cover for the unbelievable transfer of goodwill, of well-being, and of prosperity from young to old, and if you believe we can actually fix these problems and we have the resources, then I present to you, I posit, I augur the question that I hope has more veracity than it did 17 minutes and 24 seconds ago. And that's the following question. Do we love our children?
Oh, yeah, unless you're, well...
My name is Scott Galloway.
Right. Yeah, unless you're a fucking monster, of course you love your children. But you know what? I have 3 kids of my own. I love my kids as well. But it's even greater than that. You're talking about destroying what will come, right? It's not about just protecting my own kids. It's about having a structure in which the future generations, because we will be gone. We will pass. This man will be gone. So will I. And the new generations are the ones that will. And what are you leaving behind? Not only for your kids, but for all of the kids. What are you leaving behind for humanity as you just accumulate wealth? And I mean, some of these guys, they go on their own fucking private planes to do seminars about climate change and the environment. And they go on in their private jets while having freaking mansions, several of. They contaminate, consume, pollute, and if you believe in climate change, they have the most impact in climate change as well based on their own bullshit. So what high ground do they have to lecture the rest? Why don't you just cut on your own contamination spending and using of resources and screwing over future generations? Well, you know why that is. Anyway, guys, I thought it was interesting. Let me know what you think there in the comments below. And seriously, if you want to prepare for the world in which we obviously are, which is a lot of the similarities that you see in a collapsed economy, like in my case in Argentina. You have my books available there below in the description in Amazon, Surviving the Economic Collapse and Street Survival Skills. You see that in terms of the poverty. What happened in Argentina was basically, what's happening in the rest of the world is the same thing that happened in Argentina, but in slow motion. Instead of having a brutal economic collapse where everything goes to shit and banks close and the government the president leaves in a chopper and everything is mad and crazy and you're living in anarchy for days and everything is looted and everything is all of that you're seeing happen in the rest of the world, but in slow motion. Maybe some things are more noticeable. There's maybe incidents that just catch your attention more or are more newsworthy, but the increased poverty, the way in which everything is being degraded in pretty much all of the developed world, that's something you can learn from and probably help you prepare. See you on our next video, guys. Take care.